Imagine this. It's 0200 hours on a cold winter night in the north of England. You're a young soldier, fresh out of Phase 1 training, bunked in an old Victorian-era block at Fullwood Barracks. The building creaks like an old ship, and the wind howls through the cracks in the windows. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Whispers in the corridors after lights out. Footsteps pacing the parade square when no one's there, and voices. Voices calling your name from empty rooms. Fullwood Barracks, Preston, Lancashire. Established in 1848 as a permanent garrison for the British Army. It's home to the Lancashire Infantry Museum today, but for over 170 years, it's housed thousands of soldiers from regiments like the Lancashire Fusiliers, the Loyal North Lancashire Regiment, and more. This place saw men ship out to the Crimea, the Boer War, both world wars, and countless deployments since. But it's not the living who make the nights long here. It's the dead. The most infamous tale dates back to 1861. Private Patrick M.C. Caffrey, just 18 years old, executed by firing squad on the parade square for murdering his commanding officer and adjutant in a fit of rage. His body was buried in an unmarked grave. Since then, soldiers have reported hearing his footsteps, sharp, military boots on stone, echoing through the old officer's mess. Lights flicker in empty rooms. Doors slam shut without wind. And sometimes, voices. Low, urgent voices calling out names, as if searching for comrades long gone. These aren't just old yarns. Modern accounts from serving personnel describe the same phenomena. Disembodied shouts in the dead of night, shadows moving in the corners of vision, and an oppressive feeling of being watched. In the 1980s, a television crew filming here had their equipment malfunction near the garrison chapel, cameras refusing to roll, as if something didn't want to be seen. Fullwood isn't alone. Many British bases carry echoes of the past, but this one stands out. So tonight, we bring you 5 first-hand accounts from soldiers who've served here in the last 20 years. Stories of isolation, unexplained fear, and encounters that defy explanation. Chapter 1. The First Call. My name is Private First Class Daniel Harper. I served with the Duke of Lancaster's regiment at Fullwood Barracks from 2018 to 2020. I was 19, straight out of Catterick, billeted in Block 57. The old officers' mess converted into junior ranks accommodation. The building dated back to the 1860s, all red brick and high ceilings, with corridors that seemed to stretch forever under dim yellow lights. The walls were thick, the floors creaked underfoot, and no matter how high you turned the radiator, the place always felt cold, like the chill had seeped into the stone itself. It was late November 2019. I'd just finished a brutal 48-hour exercise on the Lancashire moors. Rain, mud, and endless tabbing with full kit. By the time I got back to barracks, I was shattered, covered in filth, and smelling like wet earth and sweat. I showered, threw my kit in the wash, and collapsed into my bunk. Lights out was at 2,300, but sleep didn't come easy. The room was shared with 3 other lads. Tom, who snored like a diesel engine. Gaz, who talked in his sleep. And Mikey, who was already out cold. The wind rattled the windows, and the heating pipes clanked in the walls like someone tapping out a message in Morse code. Around 0230 I heard it. A voice. Low, clear male. Harper. Harper. I sat up straight in the darkness, heart kicking against my ribs. I thought it was one of the lads messing about. Shut it, Tom, I whispered, loud enough for him to hear, but not enough to wake the whole block. No answer. Tom was snoring steadily, face buried in his pillow. Gaz didn't move. Mikey didn't stir. The room was quiet except for the wind. Then again, Harper. Over here. The voice came from the corridor outside. Not muffled, not distant, clear as if someone stood right at the door. I grabbed my phone from under the pillow, switched on the torch, and swung my legs out of bed. The floor was freezing against my bare feet. I padded to the door, opened it slowly, hinges creaking like they always did. The corridor stretched away in both directions, empty under the flickering fluorescent tubes. No one, just shadows and the faint smell of damp plaster. I stepped out, torch beam sweeping left and right. Who's there? I called softly, voice echoing off the walls. Silence. Then, from the far end, near the stairwell where the corridor turned, help me. The voice sounded young, scared, almost pleading. Like a lad my age, caught in something he couldn't get out of. My skin prickled. I walked down the corridor, boots I hadn't bothered to put on sliding quietly on the linoleum. I checked every door I passed. Most were locked. The rest dark and empty. No movement. No sound except my own breathing. I reached the stairwell. Nothing. The stairs dropped down to the ground floor, up to the next level. Empty. I stood there for a long moment, torch beam trembling slightly in my hand. The cold seemed to press in from all sides. Back in the room, I closed the door, locked it, and climbed back into bed. I told myself it was wind whistling through a vent, or fatigue playing tricks. I'd been on exercise for 2 days straight. Your mind does strange things when you're that tired. I tried to sleep, but my eyes stayed open, staring at the ceiling. At 0400, it happened again. Louder this time, more insistent. Harper, where are you? I didn't get up. I pulled the blanket over my head and lay there, pulse hammering in my ears. The voice didn't come from the corridor this time. It came from inside the room, from the far corner by the window. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just waited until it faded, until the only sound left was the wind and Tom snoring. The next morning I mentioned it to the platoon sergeant over breakfast. He was a grizzled corporal named Ellis. Been at Fullwood for years. I kept it casual. Sarge, heard someone calling my name last night. In the corridor. You ever get that? He looked at me over his tea, expression flat. MC Caffrey's looking for his mates again. Happens every few months. Ignore it. MC Caffrey. Private Patrick MC Caffrey. Shot on the parade square in 1861 for killing his CO. Buried unmarked. Some lads reckon he still wanders the corridors, calling out names. Thinks he's still waiting for his platoon or something. Ellis shrugged. Old stories. You'll get used to it. I didn't get used to it. Every night after that, the voice came. Sometimes it was just my name, soft and questioning. Sometimes it was louder, urgent. Harper, answer me. Always from the same spot. The end of the corridor. By the old archway where they say MC Caffrey was marched to his execution. The lads in the room started noticing too. Tom woke once, swearing he'd heard his own name. Gaz laughed it off, but I saw him checking the door more often. I started avoiding being alone in the block after dark. I'd stay in the Nafi late or hang around the guardroom until the last possible minute. But the voice always found me. And each time it called, it sounded a little more desperate, a little more lost. One night, about a week later, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my torch and walked straight to the end of the corridor. The archway was there, stone, arched with a faded regimental plaque above it. I stood under it, torch off, listening. Harper. The voice was right beside me. I spun around. Nothing. But the air was thick, heavy, like standing in a fog. I felt watched. Not just watched, studied. As if something was deciding whether I was the one it had been looking for. I backed away, fast, and didn't stop until I was back in the room, door shut, light on. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up until dawn, listening to the wind, waiting for the next call. It never came again. Not for me anyway. But the others still hear it sometimes. And every time someone new moves into Block 57, the voice starts calling their name. Like it's always searching, always waiting for someone to answer. I left Fullwood in 2020. I still wake up some nights, half expecting to hear it again. Harper. I don't answer. I never will. Chapter 2. The Footsteps and the Mess. My name is Corporal Sarah Wilkins. I was posted to Fullwood Barracks with the Logistics Corps from 2021 to 2023. I'd been in the Army for 6 years by then, mostly at Catterick and Tidworth. So I thought I knew what to expect from an old Victorian garrison. Fullwood was different. The place had weight to it, history you could feel in the walls. I was on night guard duty a lot, which meant long hours patrolling the site, checking locks, and keeping an eye on the perimeter. One of my regular beats was the old officers' mess, Block 57, same as the accommodation block, but the original part, still used for admin offices and occasional functions. It was early December 2021, one of those nights when the fog rolls in off the Ribble Valley, and everything feels muffled. I started my shift at 2300, picked up my radio and torch, and began the circuit. The mess was quiet as I approached. Lights off in the windows, door locked. I rattled the handle to confirm, then moved on. The patrol took me around the back, past the old kitchens, then up the stone steps to the main entrance. That's when I heard it. Boots. Heavy, deliberate. Marching up the main staircase inside. Not running, Not hurried, just the steady rhythm of a soldier on the move. Heel toe, heel toe. I stopped dead. The sound was unmistakable. Military-issue boots on stone stairs. I keyed my radio. Gatehouse. This is Wilkins. Movement inside the officer's mess. Main staircase. Possible intruder. Request backup. Static for a second, then the gate sentry. Negative, Corporal. All gates secure. No one in or out in the last hour. CCTV clear. The footsteps kept going. They reached the landing above me and stopped. Then they started pacing back and forth, like someone waiting for an appointment. I took a breath, drew my sidearm from the holster, and pushed the main door open. It creaked loudly in the silence. The foyer was dark. I flicked my torch on, beam cutting through the gloom. No one on the stairs. No shadows moving. But the air was freezing. My breath fogged in front of my face. And there was a smell. Old tobacco, pipe smoke, mixed with damp wool and leather. Like someone had walked out of a Victorian photograph and left their scent behind. I climbed the stairs slowly, torch steady, pistol in my other hand. The pacing stopped as I reached the landing. Silence. I swept the corridor left and right. Offices. All locked, doors closed. Nothing. I turned to head back down. That's when the door to the former CO's office, the one at the end of the corridor, always kept locked, slammed shut, hard. The bang echoed through the building like a gunshot. I spun around, torch beam hitting the door. It was closed tight. I approached, tried the handle. Locked. Solid. No key in the lock. No way it could have moved on its own. Then, from inside, muttering. Low, urgent male voice. Where is he? The lad. He owes me. The words were clear enough to make my stomach drop. I backed away fast, keeping the door in my torchlight. The muttering continued for a few seconds, then faded. I didn't wait to hear more. I retreated down the stairs, out into the cold night, and radioed it in again. The duty officer came out himself. Captain Hargreaves. A steady bloke who'd been at Full Wood for years. I told him what happened. He listened, didn't interrupt. When I finished, he just nodded. MC Caffrey again, he said. Private Patrick MC Caffrey. Executed 1861. They say he still paces that landing, waiting for someone. Maybe the officer who sentenced him. Maybe a maid who never showed up. The old CO's office was where they held the court-martial. Doors been slamming like that for decades. I asked if anyone had ever checked inside the room. He gave a dry laugh. We've tried. Nothing there. No drafts. No loose hinges. Just the stories. I finished my shift, but I couldn't shake it. The smell lingered in my nostrils. The pacing echoed in my head. After that night, I started noticing patterns. Every third or fourth night I was on guard. The footsteps would start again. Always around 0100. Always the same rhythm. Always ending at the landing. Sometimes the door would slam. Sometimes I'd hear the muttering. Never anything I could record. No audio, no video. The cameras in the corridor always showed empty space. I started avoiding the mess when I could. I'd do my checks quickly, stay out of the upper floor. But the place had a pull. One night I stood at the bottom of the stairs and called out, half joking, half serious, "Who's there? Show yourself." Silence. Then, from upstairs, a single bootstep, then another. Then the pacing resumed. I didn't wait for an answer. I left. The strangest part was the others. I talked to a few lads who'd been there longer. They'd heard it too. One said he'd seen a shadow move across the landing, tall, in uniform, gone in a blink. Another said the pacing stopped the night he left the barracks for good. Like whatever it was had finally given up on him. I transferred out in 2023. I still think about those nights sometimes. The sound of those boots. The smell of old smoke. The voice asking for someone who isn't coming back. If you ever pull guard duty at Full Wood, and you hear marching in the old mess, don't call out. Just walk away. Because it's not looking for you. It's looking for someone else. And it's been looking for a very long time. Chapter 3. The Shadow in the Chapel. My name is Lance Corporal Michael Reed. I was posted to Full Wood Barracks in early 2022 with the Duke of Lancaster's regiment. I'd been in for 8 years, mostly on deployments and training. But garrison life was new to me. One of my regular duties was fire piquet. Nightly checks of the site, locking doors, making sure nothing was left on or unsecured. The garrison chapel, St. Albans, was always last on the list. It sits above the main gate, a small, beautiful stone building with stained glass windows that catch the streetlights in reds and blues. At night it's quiet, almost peaceful, but not always. It was a still night in March 2022, no wind, no rain, just that heavy Lancashire cold that gets into your bones. I'd finished the rest of the circuit by 2350 and made my way up the path to the chapel. The door was supposed to be locked at all times after 2200. But as I approached I saw it was ajar, just a crack. I paused. No lights on inside. No movement. I thought maybe the wind had caught it, or someone had forgotten to secure it. I pushed it open slowly. The interior was pitch black. The smell hit me first, old wood, incense, and something metallic, like blood or rust. I stepped inside, torch in hand, and flicked it on. The beam swept across the pews, the altar, the small side chapel. Empty. Or so I thought. Then I heard it. Soft praying. Low, rhythmic. In Latin. Domini, non sum dignus. The words were familiar from school, but the voice was old, tired, almost broken. It came from the direction of the altar. I walked forward, boots quiet on the stone floor. The torch beam landed on the altar rail. There, kneeling, was a figure. He wore an old uniform, red coat, high collar, shako hat on the floor beside him. Victorian. His back was to me, shoulders hunched in prayer. I stopped dead. My mouth went dry. I wanted to call out, but nothing came. He kept praying, the Latin rolling on. Then he stopped. Slowly, he turned his head. I saw the side of his face, or rather, I didn't. Where there should have been features, there was only darkness. A void. No eyes, no mouth. Just black under the hat. He looked at me for a long second. I felt it. Cold. Heavy. Like being stared through. I dropped the torch. It clattered on the floor, beam spinning wildly. I turned and ran. Out the door, down the path. Not stopping until I was back at the guardroom. I burst in, chest heaving. The duty sentry looked up from his phone. "Reed, you all right?" I couldn't speak for a minute. Just stood there, shaking. When I finally got the words out, I told him what I'd seen. He didn't laugh. He just nodded. "That's the Padre," he said quietly. "The one who gave MC Caffrey last rites before the firing squad. They say he never forgave himself for not stopping it. Still prays in there some nights. Always turns when someone comes in. Always looks but never speaks." I asked if anyone else had seen him. The sentry shrugged. "Plenty. Mostly new lads on piquet. Some say he's looking for forgiveness. Others reckon he's warning people not to make the same mistake MC Caffrey did. Don't cross the wrong officer." I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing that faceless turn in my head. The next day I told the Padre, Father O'Connell, who runs the chapel now. He listened carefully, then showed me a small plaque on the wall. "In memory of those who served and suffered here." He said the stories go back to the 1860s. The original chaplain at the time of the execution had a breakdown afterwards. Some believe he never left. After that, I avoided the chapel at night. But duty is duty. A few weeks later I had to check it again. I stood outside the door for a long time before going in. It was locked this time. I unlocked it, stepped inside, torch on full. Empty. No praying. No figure. But the air felt thick, expectant. I started noticing other things. The candle on the altar would be lit when I arrived, even though I'd seen it extinguished earlier. The hymn books would be open to the same page. Psalm 51. The Miserere. Once, I found a single shako badge on the floor under the pew where the figure had knelt. I picked it up. It was cold, heavy, old brass. I showed it to the museum curator. He said it matched the ones worn by officers in the 1860s. I left it on the altar. The next night it was gone. I finished my tour at Fullwood in late 2022. I still carry that image with me. The faceless priest turning in the dark. Sometimes I wake up hearing Latin, soft and distant. I don't go to church much anymore. Not because I don't believe. Because I believe too much. If you ever find yourself on piquet at Fullwood and the chapel door is open at night, don't go in. Just lock it from the outside and walk away. Because whatever's praying in there isn't looking for company. It's looking for absolution. And it's been waiting a long time. Chapter 4. Voices from the Parade Square. My name is Sergeant James Carter. I served with the Duke of Lancaster's regiment at Fullwood Barracks from 2019 to 2021, finishing as a section commander in the training wing. By then I'd been in the Army for 12 years, seen my share of night exercises, guard duties, and long patrols. I thought I was used to the quiet hours when the world sleeps. At Fullwood, the quiet never really settled. It was a clear night in October 2020. I'd drawn late perimeter duty, walking the outer fence line and the parade square after everyone else was in barracks. The square is massive, tarmac and stone, flanked by the old red brick blocks and the garrison chapel. At night it's empty, lit only by a few floodlights and the glow from the guardroom windows. I was halfway across it, torch off, letting my eyes adjust to the dark, when I heard it. Voices. Dozens of them. Low, disciplined chatter, men forming up, boots shuffling into position, rifles clattering as they were shouldered. It was the sound of a company on parade, the kind you hear every morning at 0700 when the regiment falls in. But it was 0145, and the square was deserted. I stopped, breath caught. The voices grew clearer. Fall in, company. Fall in. A sergeant's bark, sharp and familiar. Then the response, sir. In unison, followed by the scrape of boots as they came to attention. I swept my torch around. Nothing. No shapes, no shadows. Just empty tarmac under the lights. The orders continued. Present arms. The metallic snap of rifles coming up. Slope arms. The clack of slings and wood. I could almost smell the gun oil and sweat. My skin prickled. I keyed my radio quietly. Gatehouse. This is Sergeant Carter. Possible movement on the parade square. Sounds like a full company drilling. Static. Then, negative, Sergeant. Square clear on CCTV. No one out there. You all right? The voices kept going. Company will march past. By the right. Quick march. And then the rhythm started. Boots hitting stone in perfect time. Left, right, left. Fading as if marching away into the distance. I stood frozen, listening to the sound recede until it was gone. I walked to the center of the square, heart thudding. The floodlights buzzed overhead. Nothing moved. I told myself it was an echo, maybe from a late training film in one of the blocks, or wind carrying sound from somewhere else. But the air was dead still. Then one voice separated from the rest. Clear, direct, aimed right at me. Carter. Fall out. My name. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken like an order from someone who knew me. I felt a hand on my left shoulder, firm, cold, the weight of it unmistakable. I spun around, torch beam whipping across empty space. No one, but the cold lingered on my shoulder, like frost on skin. I backed away, radio in hand again. Gatehouse. I just heard my name called. Felt something touch me. I'm coming in. The sentry met me at the guardroom door. He didn't ask questions, just poured me a mug of tea and sat me down. When I could speak, I told him everything. He listened, then said quietly, "It's the square. They say on nights like this, you can hear the old parades. The ones from the 1860s, when the regiment was mustered for the Crimea or the Boer War. But sometimes, it picks a name. Someone still serving. Like it's checking the roll." I asked if he'd heard it himself. He nodded. Once. My own name. Same shoulder tap. Never went back out alone after dark. I reported it the next day. The OC listened, wrote it in the log, and said, "Old echoes. Don't let it rattle you. You're not the first." But I saw the way he glanced at the window toward the square when he said it. After that night, I started noticing the square differently. On clear nights, especially in autumn, the sound would return, not every time, but often enough. The orders, the boots, the distant march, always ending with a single name called out, someone else's. Once it was a lad from my platoon, Private Ellis. He came in pale one morning. Said he'd heard his name while walking back from the gym. Same tap on the shoulder. Same nothing when he turned. I never walked the square alone again at night. I'd take the inner paths, stay close to the lights, but the sound followed. One night, just before I left Fullwood, I stood at the edge of the square with another sergeant. We both heard it, the full company forming up, marching past. We didn't speak, just listened until it faded. When I transferred out in 2021, I thought I'd left it behind. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I still hear boots on stone. And sometimes, just sometimes, I feel that cold hand on my shoulder again. I don't turn around anymore. I know there's nothing there. Or at least, nothing I can see. If you ever find yourself crossing the parade square at full wood after midnight, and you hear the orders begin, don't answer. Don't fall out. Because whatever's calling your name isn't looking for you to join the march. It's just making sure you're still on the roll. And it's been keeping that roll for a very long time. Chapter 5. The Unseen Watcher. My name is Private Emily Thompson. I arrived at Fullwood Barracks in September 2023, fresh from Phase 1 training at Purbright. I was 21, excited about my first posting with the Duke of Lancaster's regiment, but also nervous. I'd heard the usual barracks rumors, ghost stories mostly, but I told myself they were just that, stories. Block 57 was my new home. I was billeted on the second floor, a shared room with two other female soldiers. Laura, who was quiet and tidy, and Jess, who was always on her phone. The room was standard, 3 single beds, lockers, a small sink. The walls were painted that pale green the Army loves, and the windows overlooked the parade square. My first night was uneventful. I was exhausted from the move, unpacked quickly, and was asleep by 2300. The second night was different. I woke around 0330, suddenly alert, the way you do when you feel eyes on you. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the corridor light under the door. Laura was asleep, Jess too. I lay there, heart picking up speed. That's when I felt it. A presence. At the foot of my bed. Not a shape, not a shadow, just a weight. Like someone standing there watching me. I couldn't see anything, but I knew it was there. The air felt thicker, colder around my feet. My skin crawled. I stared into the darkness, trying to make out details. Nothing. But the feeling grew stronger. Burning. Like eyes locked on me, studying every breath. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. The presence didn't move. It just watched. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, but it didn't help. Then came the whisper, soft, right at the edge of hearing. "You're in my spot." The voice was low, male, almost conversational. Not angry. Just stating a fact. I sat up fast, reaching for my phone to turn on the torch. The light snapped on. The room was empty. Laura and Jess still asleep. No one at the foot of my bed. But the cold lingered, and the mirror above the sink had fogged over, like someone had breathed on it. In the condensation, clear as if written with a finger. P. M. C. Caffrey. I stared at it for a full minute, breath fogging the air. Then I wiped it away with my sleeve. The letters smeared and vanished. I didn't sleep after that. I sat up against the headboard, lights on, watching the door until morning stand to. The next day I told the section corporal. She listened, expression neutral. "Seen it before," she said. "New arrivals get the watcher. It's MC Caffrey again. Likes to claim his old bunk. Don't worry, it'll move on." I asked if I could change rooms. She shook her head. "Not unless there's a medical reason. You'll get used to it." I didn't get used to it. The watcher came back every few nights. Always the same. Waking me with that burning gaze, always at the foot of the bed. Always the whisper. "You're in my spot." Sometimes I'd hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the room before settling at the end of the bed. Once I felt the mattress dip slightly, as if weight had settled there. I never looked down. I just stared at the ceiling, whispering to myself that it wasn't real. I started sleeping with the light on. Jess noticed, asked what was wrong. I told her. She laughed at first, then admitted she'd felt it too, once, a few weeks earlier, but thought it was just the building settling. After I told her about the mirror writing, she stopped laughing. Laura never said anything, but she started leaving her rosary beads on the windowsill. One night in November, it got worse. I woke to the presence, stronger than before. The whisper came clearer. "This was mine. You shouldn't be here." Then the bed shifted, hard, like someone sat down heavily. I screamed. Laura and Jess both woke. Lights on in seconds. The room was empty. No dip in the mattress. But the mirror was fogged again. The same words. P. M. C. Caffrey. I requested a transfer the next morning. The OC denied it. "You're not the first, Private. It stops after a while. Or it doesn't. Either way, you stay." I started avoiding the room as much as possible. I'd stay in the NAFI until closing, or sit in the gym until it shut. But eventually I had to go back. The watcher waited, always patient. always there. I left for Wood in mid-2024. The last night I spent in that room, the presents didn't come. For the first time since I arrived, the foot of the bed was empty. I slept soundly. But as I was packing my kit the next morning, I found something under my pillow. A small brass button, old, stamped with a regimental insignia from the 1860s. I don't know where it came from. I didn't keep it. I left it on the windowsill, next to Laura's rosary. I still think about that room. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, feeling watched. I don't look. I just pull the covers tighter and wait for dawn. If you ever get posted to Full Wood, and they assign you a bed in Block 57, check the foot of it before you sleep, because something might already be there. And it doesn't like sharing. Chapter 6. The Locked Room. My name is Private Ryan Cole. I arrived at Full Wood Barracks in January 2024 with the Duke of Lancaster's regiment. I was 18, fresh from infantry training at Catterick, and assigned to Block 57 on the 3rd floor. The block was old, Victorian brick, narrow windows, corridors that seemed to curve away into shadow. My room was at the far end, near a section of the building the lads called the back wing. It was quieter there, fewer people, but the air always felt heavier. I'd been there about a month when I first noticed the door. It was set into the wall at the end of the corridor, right opposite my room. Solid oak, painted the same dull green as everything else, with an old brass knob and a heavy keel. No handle on the inside, just a keel. It was always locked. I'd tried the knob once, out of curiosity, didn't budge. No one ever talked about it. When I asked my section corporal what was behind it, he just shrugged. Old storage. Been locked since before I got here. Don't worry about it. I didn't think much of it at first, but the door started to bother me. Every time I walked past, I felt it watching, like it was waiting. I began noticing things. The paint around the frame was peeling in thin strips, as if someone had tried to force it open long ago. The floorboards in front of it creaked louder than anywhere else. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear a faint scratching from inside, like fingernails on wood. One night in March, around 0230, I couldn't sleep. The wind was howling outside, rattling the windows. I got up to get water from the sink in the corridor. As I passed the door, I heard it again, scratching, slow and deliberate. I stopped. The sound stopped too. I leaned closer, ear almost to the wood. Silence. Then a soft click. The lock. I stepped back. The door eased open an inch, just enough for a sliver of darkness to show through. No light inside. No sound. I stared at it, pulse hammering. The door didn't swing further. It just stayed there, ajar, like an invitation. I should have walked away. Instead, I reached out and pushed it gently. It opened wider without resistance. The hinges didn't creak. Inside was a small room, bare brick walls, no windows. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, off. The air was cold, stale, like no one had breathed in there for years. There was a narrow cot against one wall, a wooden chair, and a small table. On the table sat an old regimental cap, faded red with a tarnished badge. Dust covered everything. I stepped inside. The door didn't close behind me. I flicked my phone torch on and swept the beam around. The walls had scratches, dozens of them. Low down, like someone had clawed at the brick. Names were carved into the plaster. P. M.C. Caffrey, J. Doyle. Help me. The letters were uneven, desperate. I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow, ragged, from the corner behind the cot. I turned the torch. Nothing. But the breathing continued. Then a voice. Low, young, broken. Ryan. My name. Spoken like a question, like someone testing if I was real. I froze. The voice came again, closer. You came. I backed toward the door. The torch beam shook. The figure appeared slowly, tall, in a faded red tunic. Face pale, eyes wide. He looked 18 maybe. The same age as me. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring. I turned and ran. The door slammed shut behind me as I crossed the threshold. I didn't stop until I was back in my room, door locked, back against it, breathing hard. The next morning I told the platoon sergeant. He listened, then took me to the door. It was locked again. Solid. No sign it had ever opened. He tried the knob, nothing. Old stories, he said. Some lads say MC Caffrey was held in there before the execution, waiting for the firing squad. They say the room still opens for people it recognizes. I asked if anyone had ever gone in. He shook his head. Not that they'll admit. And if they did, they don't talk about it. I avoided that end of the corridor after that. But the door was always there. Sometimes I'd hear the lock click in the night, like it was testing itself. Sometimes I'd wake to the sound of scratching again. I never went near it. One night in April, I came back late from the gym. The corridor light was flickering. As I passed the door, it stood open again. Just a crack. I didn't stop. I walked faster, head down, pretending not to see. But I heard the voice from inside, soft, almost sad. "Ryan, come back." I didn't. I kept walking. I left Fullwood a few months later. The door was still there when I went, locked tight. But I still hear that voice sometimes, in quiet moments, calling my name, asking me to come back. I never will. Chapter 7. The night of the firing squad. My name is Lance Corporal Thomas Hale. I was with the Duke of Lancaster's regiment at Fullwood Barracks from 2022 to 2025. I was 27, a section second in command, and I'd been on night duty more times than I could count. By 2025, I thought I'd seen everything the place had to offer: footsteps, voices, shadows. I was wrong. The worst came on a single night in February 2025. It was the 13th, cold, clear, no moon. I was on duty with 3 others: Private Khan, Corporal Davis, and Lance Corporal Patel. We were tasked with a full site patrol, perimeter blocks, parade square, chapel, and the old armory. Nothing unusual. We split up to cover ground faster. I took the parade square and the surrounding paths. The floodlights were on low, casting long shadows across the tarmac. The square was empty, silent except for the distant hum of the motorway. Around 0215 I heard the first shot. Sharp, crisp, like a 303 round cracking the night. Then another, and another. 6 in total, spaced evenly. I froze. The sound came from the center of the square, but there was no muzzle flash. No smoke, no one there. I keyed my radio. "Gatehouse, this is Hale." Shots fired on the parade square. 6 rounds. I'm investigating. Static. Then, negative, Corporal. No reports of firing. CCTV clear. "You sure it wasn't backfire or something?" Before I could answer, the orders began. A voice older, formal, parade ground sharp. "Firing party present." Arms. The metallic click of rifles coming up. Then, "Take aim." A pause. Fire. 6 more shots. Louder this time. I spun around, torch sweeping. Nothing. But the air smelled of black powder and cordite. Faint but unmistakable. My skin went cold. Then the scream. Not a shout, a raw, desperate cry. "No. Please." I didn't mean cut off by the final volley. The echo died away, leaving only ringing in my ears. I started running toward the sound, boots pounding the tarmac. I reached the center of the square where the old execution post had stood in 1861. There was nothing there now, just a faint outline in the stone where the post had been bolted down. I stopped, breathing hard. The voice came again. This time softer, pleading from right in front of me. "Help me. I'm sorry. Tell them I'm sorry." I felt movement around me, shadows shifting, as if men were forming up in a line. I heard boots shuffling into position, the rustle of uniforms, the low murmur of soldiers waiting for the command. Then the sergeant major's bark. "Load. Ram down. Prime." I backed away, torch beam shaking. The shadows thickened, tall figures in red coats, rifles at the shoulder, faces blurred. They didn't look at me. They were looking at the post, at something tied to it. A single figure stood there, young, in a plain tunic, hands bound behind his back, head bowed. He lifted his face, pale, terrified, eyes wide. He looked straight at me. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell them it was a mistake." The orders came. Ready, aim, fire. The volley cracked again, deafening. The figure jerked, slumped. The shadows dissolved. The square was empty once more. I stood there for a long minute, chest heaving, torch on the ground where I'd dropped it. My radio crackled. "Hale? You there? Report." I picked up the radio. My voice sounded distant. It's gone. Just echoes. The others converged on me minutes later. Khan was pale. I heard it too, from the chapel side. Shots, orders, everything. Davis nodded. Same. Like the firing squad was right there. Patel didn't speak. He just stared at the spot on the ground. We reported it. The OC came in at 0400. Listened to our statements. He didn't dismiss it. He just said quietly, February 13th, 1861. The date MC Caffrey was shot. Happens every few years on the anniversary. Some lads hear it. Some don't. Tonight was your turn. He logged it and sent us off duty. None of us slept. I finished my tour at Fullwood later that year. I never went back to the square at night. But on February 13th, wherever I am, I still hear it sometimes. The shots, the orders, the final plea. And I wonder if he ever got the forgiveness he was asking for. If you're ever posted to Fullwood and the calendar reads February 13th, stay inside after dark, because the firing squad still drills on that square. And they're still waiting for someone to answer the roll.